Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the McKinney. Their part number Tb2714 26D. This is a hinge, obviously. It is a typical hinge. It is a TB, which stands for, well, it's a Tb2714, and all of that conspires to mean a lot of things. In no particular order, it means that it is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame to provide that gap that you're going to have between the two leaves. It means that it is a 5-knuckle hinge and that it is a ball bearing hinge. Interestingly enough, with McKinney, they place those bearings in these positions. Now, it also means it's a standard weight hinge. If it was a heavyweight hinge, it would have 4 bearing packets, and it would be a different part number as well. A standard weight hinge in a 4.5 inch tall is going to be 134 thousandths thick, and my caliper tells me 0.135. So incredibly accurate tolerance to what it ought to be. It means that it is a steel-based hinge. Okay, made of steel. It is, I think I've covered everything that part number means. Ball bearing, full mortise, 5-knuckle, steel-based hinge. Screw hole locations would certainly be in a template pattern. That is a standardized location for those holes. And there is a link below this video to not only the cut sheet, but also the product catalog. A very clean logo stamp that's on there, not excessive. I have opinions on the size of logos on hinges. Some people just really overdo it. I don't think what do I know, but I would prefer just McKinney on there and then a discrete UL labeling on the product so that it was obvious that it is UL labeled. The back of the hinge is also finished, which is atypical. Not every manufacturer does that. And while I would say that it's a bit nicked and dinged, some manufacturers ignore the back of the hinge to a great extent, visibly so. And it's nice to be able to take pride in what the hinge looks like when you take it out of the box as well. And that's what we're looking at here. Let's take a look at that template and see if there's anything else to discuss, see what there is to discuss on that. We have that document, the template pulled up. What you're seeing is a couple of columns, steel hinges and then non-ferrous steel or stainless steel hinges. They do use a different part number for the to differentiate between the two. What they don't do is differentiate between stainless and brass. I would personally like it if they did, because then it would give us the ability to rely on a part number. So fire-rated pair of steel doors, I want it to be non-ferrous. It would be okay to use a Tb2714, but then I'm relying on my finish to tell me that it is a stainless base material like 32D. I'd like a different part number. There is a manufacturer who certainly uses a different part number for the base material as well, which I think is brilliant. They could have made stainless like whatever 25. They could make 2314. Brass could be 2514. Steel could be 2714. Anyway, moving back to the template, you'll see the dimensional locations of the screw holes, and that template is going to be used for different products in the sense that the document itself, the dimensional properties apply to more than just one part number and more than one size of each part number. So consolidating dozens and dozens of different possibilities on a single page makes a lot of sense, because what won't change will be the location of the screw holes, measured from the side, measured from the top. The S dimension that's there, the S distance, the swag line, or swage, some people pronounce it, that will change. But nonetheless, that's what you're dealing with. Okay? That's an important dimension because it can help you, using your, in your mind's eye, lay out a hinge, because what they're calling out there are wide throw hinges as well. A 4.5 by 4, and then a 4.5 by 4.5. We're dealing with a 4.5 by 4.5, and then the wide throws, the 5, 6, 7, and 8 inch wide. Now on the size itself, this is 4.5 tall. It's really important to know that the height is indeed the first dimension. I suppose it doesn't matter if you're dealing with a square hinge, but it sure does if you're dealing with a 4.5 by 4 or any of those wide throws that are wider than they are tall, because you definitely want to know how tall you're prepping the door, meaning you don't want to have a 4.5 by 4 and make a 4-inch prep in the door. That would be wrong. The height is the first dimension. It's opposite of how doors are. And a very common hinge that you'll see is not only 4.5 by 4, but 5 by 4.5. So be mindful, the height is the first dimension. Speaking of those holes, screws are included. There are 3 of these packages because this client ordered 3 hinges. You're going to get all machine screws and all wood screws. That's not going to be a problem. You'll be able to do wood by wood, wood by metal, metal by wood, metal by metal. I am a fan of specifying the fasteners that you want. If you know you're doing steel frame wood doors, specify half wood screws, half machine screws, and at least the factory has the information necessary. And why I say that is because there's 8 of each in this bag, but what if there was 8 machine screws and 4 wood screws, and you happen to be doing a wood door and a wood frame? Would not be unusual to see only half wood screws as standard practice. So take your time and detail that. We'll be happy to pass that information along when we ship the material out. Those are 1224 machine screws with a thread cutting or a thread forming feature on the end, where they will kind of, the tip of that machine screw, you can see it there with that little bird's mouth preparation. What that does is in a steel frame or a door, it helps clear out the prime coat paint that's in there that comes from the factory. So that's why that looks like that. It has an undercut head as well. So you can see that the underside of the screw squares off. A flat head, as you know, is like this. Well, you need a flat undercut head when you're applying a flathead screw to something that's too thin for the height of a flat head to actually sit flush in, so they undercut the head. It's a flat undercut head is how that screw works, and that's why it looks that way. The wood screws are number 12, 1.25" long, flathead Phillips. Lots of options can be done on this product. Now we're going to skip over to the cut sheet. Show you the different sizes available in this hinge. They can go up to a 6x6. If you need to go larger than that, I would suspect that you're going to be looking at a heavyweight version of the hinge. The options down below, this model is, there's none, it is a TB style, and it basically means it is a ball bearing hinge. Fully reversible. If you wanted to take this hinge for whatever reason and flip it over, you could. You would just drop that pin out via access, maybe a small center punch through that hole and drive the pin out. I don't see why you would need to reverse that. I suppose if you wanted that logo on one side at all times, you could certainly accomplish that and then reverse your pin. Non-removable pin can be done. That's a security feature to a hinge. You would always want that on exterior doors that swing out. You can do a speaking of security features, the SSF safety stud feature, that would be a significant upgrade to the security function on a hinge. And I even see them done both ways, where there's the NRP and the SSF. You can do radiused corners. You can do concealed bearing as well, where you don't see those bearing packets. And people will order concealed bearing because they simply don't like the look of an exposed bearing packet. And that's why they'll order a concealed bearing. You can do a hospital. A modification that's done when you can basically use your imagination and agree that this is a 90-degree corner. Well, when they do a hospital tip, they literally radius that. And the purpose of them doing that is, I would argue that someone could say that it's easier to keep it clean with a radiused feature, but it's called a hospital tip because it does work towards serving the needs of an application where ligature resistant is required on the project, meaning nothing can be put over this without slipping off is the concept. If something were to be hung on that tip, it will slide off. Use your imagination to please what I'm referring to. Ligature resistant. Ball tips, you can do decorative tips, either a ball tip or a steeple tip. Ball tip is by far the most common of the decorative tips. That's called a button tip. If you use your imagination, it looks like the button on your coat. You can do electrification, electro links. You can run 2, 4, 6, 8 or 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 or 12 wires through this with electrolinks connectors. You can do concealed circuit as well. And you can do a 18 gauge version of that as well when you have something that's going to have a substantial amount of amperage that will run through. You can have an exit device that requires a ton of inrush amps, like more than 12, and you're not going to be able to run that through 28 gauge wires, so you'll use 18. Magnetic monitoring, obviously they can toss some fanciness into your hinge so that your door can basically know, it's so that someone could know the position of the door, or maybe a piece of electrified hardware that says, electric deadbolt, please don't attempt to relock until the door's closed. If you had a magnetic monitoring capability in here based on like a timer, you might be able to have that door close, give it 0.5 second or 2 seconds, and then lock the lock. Restricted by imagination really only. And that covers the product catalog of the McKinney hinge. The name McKinney is synonymous with hinges. Pin and barrel, aluminum continuous, geared. Obviously commercial hinges like this. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page that will not only allow you to go through the current catalogs that are available, but also some archival stuff. A couple of fun facts. Back in the in the World War II era, they were a company that focused on wrought iron type of hardware. Black hammered material that you would see on Gothic types of installations. Doors that have large C-style hinges with features to them. And in the 80s, for sure, McKinney was into Division 10 as well, commercial bathroom hardware. Very occasionally, someone will call me looking for a McKinney toilet paper holder, and that material's been long discontinued for decades. Any questions on the TB2714 and a 4.5 and a satin chrome finish? And obviously they can do any finish that you need on a steel-based material. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, satin polished. Powder-coated finishes are all the rage nowadays. ASA Abloy brand companies, of which McKinney is one of them, will accommodate powder-coated requests. White, red, black, other colors as well. Oil rub bronze. Specials, I've had them quote a special finish. I forget what it was. It might be an antique bronze relieved and lacquered. I forget what it was. Anyway, any questions on the TB2714 or any other McKinney product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.